29th of March, Palm Sunday. Sermon on Matthew chapter 21, verses 1 to 11, and Psalm 118, verses 1 to 2 and 15 to 29. It's Palm Sunday, the Sunday before Easter Day, and the start of Holy Week. Jesus' final entry into Jerusalem, riding in humble triumph as foretold in the prophecy of Zechariah, was the high point before the descent into the questioning of his authority, the traps laid for him, the plots against his life, the betrayal by one of his closest disciples, the desertion by the others, his arrest, trial and death. Jesus certainly knew what lay ahead, but the jubilant crowds who greeted him most likely had no inkling of what would happen in Jerusalem that Passover week. Even his closest followers, whom he had warned many times that he would be crucified, had disregarded his words. It must have looked to them that all was coming right, according to their hopes and dreams of a Messiah who would oust the Romans and declare himself king, restoring Israel to its former glory. Jesus had clearly planned ahead for this event. He had arranged to have a donkey and her colt available, with the password, "The Lord needs them." Jesus had in mind the prophecy of Zechariah that he was about to fulfill, and also Psalm 118, part of the Hallel that was always sung on festal occasions, including Passover. It's because of that psalm that the crowd would shout, "Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest," a direct quotation from the psalm. Jesus' disciples collected the donkey as arranged and its colt, laid their cloaks on them, and Jesus mounted. He did not, of course, ride both animals, as the Gospel account seems to say. It's always conjured up pictures of Jesus balancing confidently with a foot on each, like Zorro. But let's be sensible and conclude that it was the multiple cloaks upon which Jesus sat, not both beasts. His entry into Jerusalem was to be dignified. And who made up the crowd that greeted Jesus so rapturously? It's common for preachers to contrast the behaviour of the crowds who welcomed Jesus with those who within a week would be crying, "Crucify him," suggesting that it was the same people displaying fickle behaviour. I don't think that's true. It's much more likely that the masses of people on Palm Sunday were Galileans and others who had become Jesus' followers during his 3 years of ministry. I believe their greetings were genuine and heartfelt. These people knew the scriptures. The crowd before Pilate, on the other hand, were most likely a renter mob, hired and encouraged by the Pharisees and other religious leaders who did not want their Messiah. Matthew's account tells us that Jesus' entry into Jerusalem caused the whole city to be stirred. It seems that nothing remotely like it had happened for centuries, certainly not since the reign of the last king. The people asked, "Who is this?" And the reply came as the crowd roared back, "This is Jesus, the prophet from Nazareth in Galilee." We're very familiar with this story, which we read every year, and some churches reenact the procession into Jerusalem. As a little girl, I remember walking rather piously down the main street of our village in a long line of church attenders, singing hymns and wearing our best clothes. My Aunt Hilda called it walking in charity, but I don't think there was much charity involved. It was just a change of routine, and for us children, a bit of fun. However, this act of entering Jerusalem as a triumphant king was an important demonstration by Jesus. Psalm 118 was originally written to commemorate a battle fought by a king of Israel, returning after a victory that he had not expected to win, or even to survive. For he says, "I did not die, I lived." We don't know which king wrote this psalm, but it could have been David after he'd fled from his son Absalom and had come back after Absalom's defeat, welcomed as the king who had delivered them from their enemies. He had been like a rejected stone, but was restored, and in a sense became the cornerstone of the nation and of the future messianic promise. Interestingly, Elizabeth Tudor, after a period of her life when she'd been imprisoned by her sister Queen Mary and was in great danger, quoted from this psalm when she heard of the death of Mary and that she was now queen. She said, "The Lord has done this, and it is marvellous in our eyes." But this psalm is also prophetic, referring as it does to one who could not possibly be an ordinary human monarch. "This is the gate of the Lord through which the righteous may enter," writes the psalmist. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, he alone had the right to claim to be righteous, or to be the blessed one who comes in the name of the Lord. As the greater son of David, Jesus appropriated this psalm, enacting this triumphal entry into the holy city. Like the king of the psalm, he expected to die, but he knew he would also live again. Jesus was presenting himself, though, not as a triumphal king returning from battle, for his battle still lay ahead, but as a humble king riding not on a war horse, but on a donkey. This gesture was redolent of hidden meaning for those with understanding to discover it. What the people did recognize was that this was their Messiah, and in responding to the psalm they shouted hosannas to him and lined his path with palm branches, just as the psalm had foretold. This Palm Sunday, however we celebrate it, is a reminder of the cost of our salvation and of the provenance of our King and Saviour. He willingly came to bring about our reconciliation with God. He carried out his ministry without any hint of fear or apprehension of what lay ahead. When the time came, he entered Jerusalem without flinching for his final week, facing the hostility of his enemies and the anguish he would feel for those who were to reject him. Thankfully, though, there were enough people who were ready to put their faith in him, and although his closest followers were to abandon him at his arrest, when he returned having defeated death, like the triumphant king of the psalm, they renewed their faith and carried forward the gospel message, so that we too can put our faith in Jesus and declare with the psalmist, "The Lord's right hand is lifted high. The Lord's right hand has done mighty things. Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His love endures forever."